I've seen a recent trend pop up on social media called the sacred window theory. It describes a quiet moment in life that doesn't announce itself, a moment you only realize later. A stillness, a softness, a deep knowing. A time when your parents are still healthy, your children are still small, laughter fills your home, and the people you love are still close enough to hold. I felt that moment. I didn't know to name it at the time, but I felt it. And I remember taking a picture of it in my mind. It replays itself on the balcony of our Airbnb in Jerusalem after a whirlwind trip to Israel, my father's #1 bucket list dream. The skies are Jerusalem blue, a soft afternoon breeze, Omer Adam's music playing in the background. I'm dancing with my baby, giggling in her little I Love Jerusalem t-shirt. My twin girls are inside getting ready to go out, dancing with their Zeta, their grandfather. My mother is packing her bag, smiling at her husband of 43 years. There is light in both their eyes. Life was full. We were full of gratitude. We had just spent 6 beautiful weeks in Israel, showing our children their land, their story, their inheritance given to them by their forefathers. I stand there looking out over Jaffa Street below. I didn't know that was our sacred window, and I didn't know how quickly it would close. Only months later, everything shatters. Our sense of safety was torn away in a single act of horrific violence. The world we trusted suddenly tilted beneath us. December 14th, a day that feels like yesterday and a lifetime ago, all at once, a nightmare that keeps looping in my mind. Because even knowing the anti-Semitism that has always existed, even feeling the tension that had been building, nothing prepares you for terror to arrive so openly, so violently in your own backyard. This did not happen far away on a screen. It happened here in our home. It killed my father, Rueben Morrison, a man who had come to a Hanukkah celebration for his community to stand proudly as a Jew to bring light. And he did that here in Australia, a country he loved, a country whose values of fairness, decency, and freedom he believed in deeply. And in a moment, that light was taken from me as a daughter, from my children as a Zeta, from my mother as a husband, from our community as a pillar of strength and warmth. One of my daughters asked me, was Zeta killed because he was Jewish? What do you answer an innocent 7-year-old? How do you explain that something so beautiful, so ancient, so full of light can make you vulnerable in ways a child should never have to understand? I have no perfect answer, but I know this. I must give them what their Zeta live by: pride, courage, dignity, strength, the conviction that you never apologize for who you are. And I thought about my father's story, a Jewish boy growing up in the Soviet Union, where being openly Jewish was dangerous. Judaism was hidden, whispered, suppressed. At 14, he fled Ukraine and arrived in Australia as a refugee. This country gave him something he had never known: safety, dignity, a chance to build a future. He was deeply proud to be Australian, grateful for a nation that welcomed Jews when so many others turned them away. He met my mother, Leah, on Bondi Beach. They married young, not yet religious, but deeply connected to their Jewish identity. They wanted a Jewish home, a chuppah, a life shaped by meaning and heritage. During a difficult time trying to have a child, they connected with Chabad of Bondi and Rabbi Ullman and began writing to the Lubavitcher Rebbe, a great Jewish leader based in New York who guided Jews around the world. My father chose to fully enter the covenant of his people. My mother began observing the laws of family life. They sought blessing, guidance, and strength. And 10 months later, despite every medical prediction, I was born. Everything changed. My father became fully observant. He built his home around Torah, mitzvot, kindness, and his people. He lived Judaism not quietly, but proudly, joyfully, and without hesitation, and always holding himself for his community. So when my 7-year-old asks me if her Zeta was killed because he was Jewish, I think about a man who had already lived through hatred for being Jewish and who still chose to live his life visibly and proudly as a Jew. A man who in his final moments gave his life protecting others, who faced evil with his faith and his bare hands. This is the legacy I must give my children. And I think about our history. The attack happened at the onset of Hanukkah, the story of Jews told where they could stay, but only if they abandoned who they were, and a small group refused. They fought not simply for land, but for identity and faith, and when they won, they didn't celebrate with power, they lit a flame, a small, unwavering light in a desecrated place. That is our story. We answer darkness with light. We light our menorahs at home, and we place the light by a window and door frame so it shines outward into the world. Our message now is the same. Our identity does not bend to outside pressure. We are guided by Torah, our moral and eternal guide for life. Our story is not exile. It is home, Israel, the heart of the Jewish people. There is no Jewish people without Israel, and no Israel without the Jewish people. Our connection to that land is not new. It did not begin in 1948. It is ancient, carved through covenant history and generations of longing. The world has repeatedly tried to sever that tie. Every attempt has failed. We cannot allow anyone to rewrite our story. Our existence unsettles parts of the world, not because of politics, but because we are still here. A people who outlived every empire that tried to erase us. A people who carried a language of faith and a promise through millennia and returned home. If we are still here, thriving, rebuilding, standing tall, then maybe history isn't random. Maybe the covenant isn't a myth. Maybe God keeps his promises. During Shiva, the 7 days of mourning, visitors came again and again with the same words. May God comfort you among the mourners of Zion and Jerusalem. The Lubavitcher Rebbe taught that Jewish grief is never solitary. No Jew mourns alone. When we grieve for Zion and Jerusalem, we remind ourselves that our story did not end in destruction. Exile was not the final chapter. A temple of stone was destroyed, but the temple within the heart of every Jew cannot be. And that's exactly the story my father lived, a life shaped by exile and return, by faith after darkness, by standing as a Jew even when it was dangerous. When I buried my father, I buried a part of myself, the naive, innocent part that thought grief and terror were things you witnessed, not things that would one day tear through my own home. On the flight from Melbourne to Sydney on December 14th, on my way to my mother, I could not imagine ever standing upright again. And here I am, standing, speaking, carrying his story forward, because our people do not retreat into darkness. We choose light. We choose responsibility. That is what my father embodied. A Jewish boy beaten for being Jewish, a refugee who arrived with nothing, a man who built a home of Torah and warmth, a grandfather dancing with his granddaughters in Jerusalem, a man who stood between terror and others. People tell me I am strong, but the strength is not mine alone. It is inherited from him and from our people. Every Jewish soul brings a light into this world. My father fulfilled his life's purpose, and that is what he handed to us, not just pride, but the knowledge that each of us is here for a reason with a higher calling. As Australian Jews, now is the time to stand together. We are deeply grateful to the many Australians of all backgrounds and faith who have stood behind our community with compassion and decency, not only in the aftermath of this tragedy, but always. We are proud Australians. This is our home. And at the same time, we live with a deep, unbreakable connection to Israel, not just as a place, but our home and our heart. Currently, many of us live here in the diaspora. We have a mission here, to live as Australian Jews with pride, to choose light over fear, to choose goodness over hatred, as grateful, loyal citizens of this country we call home, contributing to the part of society we are part of. I want to end by speaking to the families who are living with an absence that will never be filled. There are no words that can touch the depth of your pain. May God give you strength for each day, for each breath, for each step forward. May God hold you when the weight feels unbearable. May you feel the love of an entire people surrounding you. To President and First Lady Herzog, thank you for standing with Australian Jewry and with the families. And to the Australian leaders here today, thank you for your compassion, your solidarity, and your willingness to stand with us. My father believed deeply in this country, in its courage, its fairness, its decency, and he believed deeply in our people, our resilience, our light, and our purpose. We are a people who rebuild after every fall, a people who turn grief into responsibility and darkness into the ultimate bright, shining light. So when I look at my children, his grandchildren, I know exactly what I must give them. I will give them the story of who their Zeta was, a man who survived hatred, chose dignity, lived with faith, danced with them in Jerusalem, and stood fearlessly to protect others. I will tell them what he stood for. I will tell them what kind of courage runs through their veins. I will tell them that being a Jew is not something to hide, it's something to carry proudly, with strength, humility, with love, because that is how he lived, and that is how his light continues. Grief may bend us, but it will not break us. Hatred may wound us, but it will not define us. Terror may strike us, but it will not write our story. We will. We will answer with life, with our unwavering faith, with unity, with the courage to stand even when it feels impossible. My father's story is now my responsibility to carry forward. It's my children's inheritance flowing through their DNA, and it is part of the story of Australian Jewry at this moment. I carry that responsibility with pride. I carry it with love. And above all, I carry it as Rueben Morrison's daughter.